Topper Talk podcast is sponsored by the Fireman Moving Company. The Fireman Moving Company is the official moving company of WKU Athletics. Not only can they be trusted to move all the coaches in and out of Western, but they can move you anywhere nationwide. The Fireman Moving Company is owned and operated by firemen and is founded by WKU alumni. If you're looking to move sometime soon, give them a call at 270-791-1755 and get yourself a free quote. Welcome to Topper Talk, your number one Western Kentucky athletics podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Moffitt, and I'm joined by co-host Tyler Bailey. Hilltopper Nation, whether it's happening on the hill or on the road, grab those red towels, stand up and cheer, because it's up next on Topper Talk. All right, welcome back, and thank you for downloading and listening to another episode of the Topper Talk podcast. We are the official podcast of the Red Towel Trust Collective, and we're a member of the College Huddle podcast community. Be sure to give us a follow on all our social medias. We're on Twitter or X at Topper_Talk. Check out our YouTube channel. All of our episodes are also there. Tons of interviews, just great content that goes up weekly. And as always, I've got Tyler here with me, man. We're going to dive into a painful recap of the game on Saturday, and then talk about the EKU game coming up this coming Saturday. So, Tyler, man, how you doing? You ready to dive in?
Hey, man, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I hope everybody had a nice and relaxing Labor Day. But yeah, this recap's going to be rough at the beginning and hopefully good at the end. So let's jump into it.
Now, before we do that, we've got to get caught up with our Red Towel wrap-up, which catches us up with all the WKU athletics that we've missed since we last recorded, which, as always, is brought to us by Trent Bedding Company. Let's get a word from Trent.
Don't forget your headboard, pillows, and your sheets. We got everything you need for a good night's sleep. Number one on the same check, best of Bowling Green.
All right. Hey! Twin, full, queen, and king. Mattresses for anything. Come and pick it out and we can bring it to your house. Have you sleeping real good before the weekend's out. Trent Bedding. It's just like a mattress store. Hey.
Gosh, that's such a vibe right there. All right, so Lady Toppers basketball announced the hiring of Tara Jones to the staff.
Yeah, welcome to the Hill, Tara. New member of the women's basketball staff. So, hopefully she can get us right. Help out Greg Collins there and the team. We've got a lot of new faces that we'll talk about when we get closer to basketball season. But yeah, definitely welcome to the Hill, Tara.
All right, now this next one may be a little bit long, but that's a good thing. Pro tops that made the NFL roster. You got Malachi Corda, he's on the Jets 53. Austin Reed, he's on the Bears practice squad. Broderick Martin, he's on the Lions injury reserve, physically unable to play. Khalif Halassi, he's on the Browns 53. D'Angelo Malone, he's on the Falcons 53. Bailey Zappi, he was waived by the Patriots and picked up for the Chiefs practice squad. Devin Key, he's on the Broncos 53. Jordan Meredith, he's on the Raiders 53. Lucky Jackson, he was waived by the Vikings and picked up for the Vikings for the practice squad. Mike White, he was waived by the Dolphins, signed to the Bills practice squad. George Fant, he's on the Seahawks 53. Braden Iverson, he was waived by the Titans, picked up by the Packers, and he made their team. Tyler Higbee, he is physically unable to play. Iggy, he was released by the Lions. David Davis, he was waived by the Panthers. Marquis Stepp, he was waived by the Jets. Beanie Bishop, he made the Steelers 53. Mason Brooks, he is on the Panthers practice squad. Cole Spencer, he's on the Titans practice squad. And Mitchell Tinsley, he's on the Commanders practice squad.
Yeah, so tons of pro tops. That was 20 former players that you just named off. The last four of those are guys that didn't finish up their careers at Western. They transferred out and finished elsewhere. But when I was posting that update on Twitter a few days ago, I had somebody, executive director of the Red Towel Trust chimed in and said, hey, these guys are toppers too. So he's right. Most of those guys went here. A few of them graduated here. So, I do want to show those guys some love as well. We've got some pro tops in the league, several that made 53-man rosters, some that were cut and are on practice squads, and then even several former tops, even though they didn't finish their careers here on the Hill, that are still representing in the NFL. So it just goes to show, man, you can play anywhere, G5, P5, doesn't matter. If you can play ball, they're going to find you. And 20 guys in the NFL right now is just absolutely incredible and amazing. And I'm here for it.
College football 25, they must have listened to the fans, and they have updated the uniforms and gave us the red helmet, and they finally put fans on the berms. Now, you may see the opposing team's fans on the berms like I did earlier this week. Hopefully they get that fixed, because there's no way that opposing team fans are going to be up there.
Yeah, they get run off real quick. I'm glad they fixed those. Had a patch, had an update to add the red helmets, to add the fans on the berm. I think the only other thing that needs to be updated besides the fans wearing red in the berm, I think the press box is still not updated with the visual. I assume that'll be in probably the next patch, the next update, whenever that occurs during this college football season. But yeah, definitely glad to see just more updates and just continued improved gameplay.
Moving on, WKU cross country had their first meet at the Belmont opener. Kinley Kunkel and Jared Sanfus led the way for WKU. Kunkel finished fifth, and Mary Dye was eighth as the women finished fourth. Sanfus finished 27th and had a pack of 4 Hilltoppers behind him as the men finished fifth place.
Yeah, now both Kinley Kunkel and Jared Sanfus are both sophomores. So that really kind of says a lot about the future of those programs. Just improving a lot from where they were last year, and being led by sophomores is going to be obviously good for the future of both of those teams. So really excited, really proud of them, and continuing to improve. We love to see that. Go Tops.
WKU volleyball, they beat Moorhead 3-1, beat NKU 3-0, and then sadly lost to UK 3-1. Izzy Vanderwild and Olivia Skidmore were named to the Bluegrass Battle All Tournament team.
Yeah, don't hang your head losing to UK in volleyball. They're not just a basketball school; they're also really good in volleyball. They're a top 5, top 10 program perennially. So that's not anything to be ashamed of. We did battle with them. We took the second set from them, and then battled down to the end of the fourth set. So hang in there. Obviously, we got some new faces, both Izzy and Olivia, named to the all tournament team. That's a sophomore in Izzy and a freshman in Olivia. So just like we just talked about in cross country, we know that Travis Hudson doesn't rebuild, he reloads. We know we've got a strong pack of 4 seniors on that team, but we also have some good young talent on there that's just going to continue to lead us to a lot of victories, likely conference championships, top 25 rankings, and NCAA appearances. So congrats, ladies.
Moving on, WKU soccer lost 8-0 to number 6 Arkansas.
Yeah, rough weekend for the Hilltoppers facing highly ranked opponents. We'll talk about the football version here in a minute, but yeah, number 6 Arkansas. I mean, they're one of the best teams in the nation. I think I read that they're leading the nation in goals scored so far in the soccer season, most shots on goal, most goals scored. They're just a really highly productive and offensive team. So no shame losing them 8-0 at Arkansas. Really good program, but just going to get us ready for conference play coming up.
Bailey Zappi, he will wear number 19 after signing with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, Bailey, got a new team, after the Patriots let him go, which I think is in his best interest. I don't think that was a good environment and a good place for him to learn and grow. And I definitely think the Chiefs and just the talent in that organization, and obviously having Pat Mahomes in front of him, if he can learn and soak up anything from him and ever get an opportunity, I think that's going to be much better for his growth than where he was earlier in New England. So congrats, Bailey.
And finally, Lady Topper Golf has teed off today at the Boilermaker Classic.
Yeah, they teed off just not long ago. I don't have first round results, but I know play was in progress as I was making notes for this episode. So obviously in our next episode when we're recapping EKU and looking forward to MTSU, we will update with how the golf team finished. I know we have high hopes with Katie Craig leading the charge there and the rest of the team. I have a feeling they're going to fare pretty well there and be competitive.
And that concludes the Red Towel Wrap Up, brought to you by the Trent Bedding Company.
Yeah, man. Again, another good wrap up. A couple losses to talk about in there, but that will happen. But fall sports are definitely back. A lot of good stuff in there too, man. All those NFL, those pro toppers, man. You just can't get enough of that kind of news. Just guys representing WKU into the professional ranks in football. So definitely love to see that. But now we have to move forward to our week one recap, and then we'll talk about EKU and our week two preview after that. Obviously, WKU went down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama this past Saturday and suffered the hands of a 63-0 loss to Alabama. This was the first game of the Kalen DeBoer era. It was the first game of the quarterback battle, which seems to have just continue to fester, in the fan base. If you read anything on Twitter or Facebook or message boards, there's still the Finley versus Caden debate going on. But TJ obviously started that game, had a rough go, put Caden in, and was just kind of more of the same. I think that really speaks more to a testament of how good Alabama was, how good they are, how good coach Kalen DeBoer is, and just how much talent he has on that team. They were just explosive, and in my opinion, they had a lot to prove for that first game of his coaching career at Alabama, replacing a legend in Nick Saban. I had people as we were walking into the game, Alabama fans were just talking, chatting, just saying, hey, are y'all going to cover the spread 31.5? It's 35 now. Will y'all cover it? And they're talking about TJ. And I looked at the fans, I think they're students. I looked at them, I said, I don't know, you tell me, how many points does Kalen DeBoer want to score? I think that's what it's going to come down to. If he wants to hang 70, he's going to hang 70. If he wanted to score 40, he's going to score 40. And obviously we know how that turned out. He was closer to 70 there at the end than, if he wanted to, he could have. But I think it was just a defeat. 1.9 million reasons to get over it. And we'll talk more in depth about it here in just a moment. But Tyler, what were your thoughts on the game? I know it was Reed's first Hilltopper game here to witness. So how was the game from your eyes watching at home?
Long, extremely long. Reed fell asleep during the first half, and he was cradled up in someone's arms, and he was just out of it. I thought we could have done better, done more. I know it's Alabama, and it's the number 5 team in the nation. But to get shut out 63-0, it was kind of deflating to me for the night. There's one time during the game, it was in the second half, I had to get up and go do something in another room, and I came back, and we just got the ball back, and I came back maybe 30. It felt like 30 seconds later, and Alabama had the ball, and I was like, "We already had to punt," and Jepson's like, "Yeah." So it seemed kind of disheartening to me, but you're right. He did. DeBoer is 105-12. I believe that's his head coaching record for a reason, and he is a great coach, and I think he's going to do great things down there at Alabama. And you're right, he had to come in, fill the shoes of a living legend in Nick Saban. So yeah, he had something to prove, and I believe they proved it. Jalen Milroe, he was. I think he's a Heisman candidate. Actually, I'm pretty sure he's a Heisman candidate. And you just can't let up whenever you're playing teams like that. And I don't think WKU gave up, but man, that from watching on TV, the announcers, they kept gassing up Alabama. Every time one of our receivers would get a few yards, they'd be like, he didn't have nowhere to go. But every time, one of our running backs would get a few yards, they would always kind of down talk him. But whenever Alabama would get 2 yards, 1, 2 yards, 3 yards, they'd be like, oh, he powered through them. But, that's just ESPN gassing up Bama. That they're going to do that. But we did walk away from 1.9 million. So I guess it's on to the next week, man.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's just a loss. It goes in the right-hand column. We'll talk about it. We'll gloss over it as quick as we can, and then flush this game away, forget about it, and move on to the next one. But I do want to talk about a little bit about the atmosphere in Tuscaloosa, since I was there on site. Drove down Saturday morning. We left Bowling Green about 8 a.m. We got to Tuscaloosa about 1 p.m. The tailgating scene was just as I remembered it from the 2016 game. I mean, their tailgating area is just absolutely huge. The parking is um, kind of far away for what it is, but they have shuttles. They're very efficient and a well-oiled machine, and having campus controlled, and making sure people are getting where they're going, whether you're driving, whether you're walking, whatever is going on. Obviously it's not their first rodeo. They're very good at it. They're used to having 100,000 people on campus on game days. It was awesome seeing a lot of WKU fans down there. Half and Red Towel Trust did have a tailgating tent set up kind of right in the middle of the thick of everything in the tailgating scene. Unfortunately, it did start to rain within about an hour of us getting there. Luckily, we did have a large tent area that we were able to get under. So it kind of put a little bit of a damper on the tailgating experience, so to speak. But still, I'd say that all the Alabama fans that we encountered, whether just in passing or just talking while we were walking to and from certain areas, all the Alabama fans were very nice, very gracious. Obviously, they probably just didn't feel threatened by Western Kentucky coming in and visiting. Just asked us a lot of good questions about the team and TJ Finley, and just how we thought the game might go. And one interesting thing, while there was the rain coming down, as a downpour, there was a tent, probably about 50 yards from us with a lot of fraternity guys, posted up, hanging out. Then all of a sudden, we look over, we see a ruckus going on over there. We thought a fight was breaking out. No, them boys were pulling out some Oklahoma drills right in the middle of the downpour, and it was quite just an interesting scene, and a little bit of a just a little bit of entertainment while we were just in the middle of a downpour. And really we were all just kind of crammed in the tent area with the WKU fans that did arrive for the tailgate for the athletic foundation. So definitely enjoyed the whole tailgating experience, even if it did get a little rainy. And then the night game atmosphere, 6 p.m. kickoff. The other games I'd been to were daytime kicks. It was hot outside. Luckily, it had rained and it cooled the temperature off. It quit raining about an hour before the game started. We started to walk over about a little after 5 o'clock. That was really the only pinch point of the whole tailgating experience, was trying to get into the stadium. They had a security fence around the whole perimeter of the stadium. You had to get through security first and then get to a gate for your ticket. But if that's the only complaint, we still got in there before kickoff. We had amazing seats. We were 3 rows behind the WKU bench, just basically down on field level, man. The atmosphere was full. Alabama fans stayed the entire game, 42-0 at halftime, and they did not clear out of there. The students stayed. The 300 section nosebleed seat stayed. I mean, it was really, really impressive. And then all the light shows for the media timeouts, halftime, the $1 Million Band, just everything was just an amazing and incredible experience. And I definitely recommend, if we play Alabama again in the future, if anyone listening can make the trip, if you didn't go this time, definitely try to get down there, because I mean, they are a top program, a top school in the nation, and they definitely put on a good show on the field, as well as with tailgating before the game. Now, jumping in, talking about the game did start with a couple early interceptions thrown by TJ Finley, and it felt like Alabama jumped out to a 21-0 lead. You blinked and they were up, 21-0 in the first quarter. Alabama went on to add 21 more points in the second quarter. They were up 42-0 at halftime. Caden Veltkamp was put in the game shortly before halftime. And basically, it was just more of the same. We kind of just dumbed the offense down, did a lot more running plays, not as much throwing the ball when Caden was in the game. But the offense had a lot of trouble moving the ball. The defense could not seemed to keep the explosive plays in front of them. And quite frankly, when we did the preview for this episode and we had the Bama Factor podcast on, he talked about how much speed was on this team. Alabama has a lot of guys that are just burners, and we saw that. There was just huge play after huge play. And looking at the play-by-play in the scoring drive, 6 of the 9 Alabama touchdowns were plays of 20 yards or more. So just big plays. And I think we saw that: big pass plays, big rushing plays, short passes that turned into long gains and touchdowns. Just we couldn't stop them. We couldn't keep them in front of us. And, they are who we thought they were. Now let's talk about the top performers in the game. The passers: TJ Finley was 18 out of 31 for 92 yards with 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Caden Veltkamp came in. He was 4 out of 9 with 11 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Leading rusher was Elijah Young. He had 10 carries for 18 yards. TJ Finley had 7 carries for 17 yards. Then Musa Berry was our leading receiver. He had 4 receptions for 27 yards. River Helms had 2 receptions for 20 yards, and Elijah Young had 4 receptions for 16 yards. Now, the defensive side of the ball, Nazir Ward had 5 tackles. 4 of those are solo. Darius Thomas and Chandler Matthews had 4 tackles each. Hosea Wheeler had 3 tackles, and he had our only sack and a forced fumble on the game. And then Easton Messer in the special teams return game, he had 2 kicks that were returnable. He had a total of 38 return yards for a 19-yard average. And then Lucas Canero, he missed his only field goal attempt that was from 38 yards. And the star of the game, arguably, Cole Maynard, our punter, in his first game action, had 9 total punts on the game. He had 403 total yards of punting for a 44.8 yard average with a long of 55. So, Tyler, I know that's quite a gloss over. Not really a lot of players and stats and etc. to highlight, but we did have some guys that made some plays at times. So I guess talk to me about the players or anybody that stood out to you in this game.
Well, I guess the real question was going to be coming into the game. How good was TJ Finley going to do? And whenever we was watching the replay on TV, I don't know if he just didn't see the Alabama defender in those 2 picks he threw. I'm not there on the field. It's not game speed to me. But I wish we could have had them 2 back. He did lead the longest drive though, which was like 21 plays down the field. And we was knocking on getting into the end zone, but sadly we just couldn't punch it through. Trust me, ESPN made that vividly clear whenever they kept saying we ran like 3 times more plays than Alabama did, and Alabama was already up 21 points or 28. They kept harping on that. Kind of pissed me off a little bit. But, he did have, 18 completions, 92 yards. Playing down there in such a hard, hard arena is I tip my hat to him. Veltkamp came in. I feel like they could have gave him more passing options or more passing plays. They kind of went to the screen passes, kind of went to the running plays. I kind of felt like they kind of took the chance away from him, and he was there for over 3/4 of the game. Musa Berry, I've seen some of his catches, impressive. River Helms, I was glad to see him out there again. Elijah Young, he going to do what he going to do. Also saw George Hart III in there. He had 2 carries, 4 yards, which, he's more of a bigger player. I guess more of a bowling ball, power back. I tip my hat to him as well. Messer, I feel like they did this. They ran a play this year they didn't do last year, where they put, I think it was Elijah Young and Easton Messer in the backfield, both on the sides of the QB, and they handed the ball off to Easton. It didn't go very far. Actually, he had 2 carries for 0 yards. I felt like I don't know if that's his strong suit or not, honestly. I feel like he's better as a receiver than he is a running back or, coming out of there. Keyshawn Johnson. I mean, the first few passes that Finley threw was to him. I wish Dalvin would have got more into the game. He only had 2 passes for 4 yards. And I wish of course we didn't have that much offense. I think we only had like 145 yards of offense, so numbers going to be limited. The defense, Ward, he had a great, 5 total tackles, 4 solo. Upton Stout got that passing or roughing the passer flag penalty, and they looked at it for targeting. I mean, what are you not allowed to touch the QB now? Because I didn't see roughing the passer in that. He was letting go. He still had the ball in his hands whenever he got hit. I think that was a bullcrap call. DeMarco Williams, 2 tackles, 1 solo. Anthony Johnson, 3 tackles, 1 solo. Dante McCray, 3 tackles, 2 solo. So I mean, and then Hosea Wheeler, he got that sack, got that. Was he the one that forced the fumble? I mean, that's awesome. I'm happy for Hosea Wheeler about that. And you're right, Cole Maynard. I mean, that was a practice for him. I mean, he I think we was wondering how the punting would be and how special teams would be. I mean, I feel like we got our punter in Cole Maynard. I feel like I feel like he's going to be a good one.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely was an interesting game, and Cole Maynard got a lot of opportunities to get out on the field. You mentioned George Hart getting some playing time. I failed to mention that I got to meet up with his dad and his family before the game at the tailgate, so it was awesome to meet them and get to talk to him. He's a high school football coach down in Louisiana, coaching on Friday night, and then coming to wherever George is playing. So busy man. A lot of hats off and props to him for making those trips every single weekend. Was just awesome getting to talk to him, and you could tell he's a very cerebral football mind and a very proud father, as he should be. Also got to meet Rex Robich's parents. They were there at the tailgate in the tent. Talked to them for a little bit. So just really awesome and fun time that we had down there with myself and Cody Schuler. Made the trip down and just had a lot of fun. Talked to a lot of people. Obviously, the game not as we wanted or expected, but it was Alabama. So now let's talk about the key indicators that we talk about with every single football game. Win or lose. A lot of times these key indicators are really going to paint the picture of why we won or lost, and I think that's definitely no different with this game on Saturday. So first, the first downs, Alabama had 25 first downs. WKU had 10. On third down conversions, WKU was 3 out of 18. And Alabama was 8 out of 13. Total yards, WKU had 145. Alabama had 600 yards of offense. Turnovers, WKU had 2, those early interceptions. Alabama had 1. With that fumble. And then time of possession, this one looks close, but WKU was at 29 minutes and 25 seconds, while Alabama was at 30 minutes and 35 seconds. And all that really tells me is all those explosive plays that they had. I mentioned, 6 of their 9 touchdowns were 20 yards or more. One of those was like an 80-yard run. They had a 55-yard touchdown. Just several big explosive plays, 2-3 play drives where they just went down the field very quickly and scored. So that time of possession, a little deceiving because they were just scoring so fast. We were going 3 and out quickly, giving them the ball back, and they were scoring quickly. So Tyler, talk to me about the key indicators and just how the game looked from a numbers standpoint.
I'm going to say that the time of possession really surprised me because I didn't feel like we had the ball for 29 minutes and 25 seconds versus their 30 minutes. I feel like we had it a lot less, but I guess you're right. I mean, whenever they would score like in 2 plays, I think their first 3 or 4 scores was in like 2 plays. So really quick, really fast. And I think we ate up most of that time, honestly, on that long extended drive that we had that we finally got to push down the field. I feel like that was the longest. That had to be the longest we was on the field in one drive. But first downs with us only getting 10, that's not a good feeling. You look at their total yards. We got limited to less than 150 yards. While we gave up, I don't know what the record is for total yards in Alabama. Hopefully it's not 600. So, I mean, that's never a good feeling. But we did force one turnover from them. We forced a fumble, and we didn't fumble the ball or cough the ball up any. We just threw the interceptions. So I'm not real happy with the key indicators at all. But I mean, it is week 1, and there's nothing else you can do about it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're going to jump into the game grades that we're going to do with every recap. And just a reminder, like we said in the position breakdowns, we don't share notes, so I don't know what Tyler's grades are going to be. He doesn't know what mine are going to be. But Tyler, what is going to be your grade for the WKU offense versus Alabama?
Well, whenever I was thinking about this right after the game, I wasn't going to do it too harsh because you are playing at Alabama week 1. But, the more I got looking at the numbers, the more I was pondering it and thinking about it. I'm going to give the offense a D+ on that just because, you can't get limited to 145 yards. Wasn't really doing much, wasn't really moving stuff, just made it for a long night.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going to give them a D as well. It was a tough test, and I think a lot of teams, especially G5 teams, Conference USA teams, Sun Belt teams, AAC, however you want to look at that, I think a lot of teams would have got boat raced by Alabama and how they played on Saturday. But we just have to look at our game. And our offense did struggle. I felt like we really played too much East-West football. I think we were talking about that earlier. We were really going side to side too much versus going vertical up and down the field. I don't think that helped with a team of Alabama's size and speed and talent. So, the offense gets a D from me. What about the defensive grade?
So defense, we did force a fumble, but we also gave up 600 yards, multiple big-time plays. I'm going to give them a D as well.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going to give them a D. I mean, there were at times and in the second half especially, they calmed down a little bit and were a little bit more sound and kind of didn't give up as many big plays. And we know that's a tough matchup. But, yeah, 600 yards offense, 63 points, nearly 70 if they wanted to punch that last possession in. I mean, that's a rough showing for the defense, and I know there's only nowhere to go but up from here. So I'm right there with you, a D. What about your grade for the special teams unit?
Well, this is the one shining moment. I'm gonna give them a B+. It would be an A- or an A had Lucas not missed that field goal. But I mean, with Maynard's punting, I'm liking them numbers, liking the average, the long of 54 yards. So I'm gonna give them a B+.
Yeah, I'm close to you. I'm at a C+. I'm kind of straddling C and B. If I could do that, I'd straddle it. The missed field goal obviously wasn't great. The punts were good. He had one that he kicked 55 yards. That was his long on the night. I'd like to see, I guess, a little bit of a higher average. 44 yards was his average. I'd like to see 45 plus. So I guess I'm nitpicking for somebody that was out there 9 times. And probably was getting rushed and had people in his face if I was paying more attention to that. But he got the ball out. Did have some good punts. Has a good leg on him. So good showing for his first game action with WKU. So I'm right there with you. I'm gonna give him a C+. I'm not quite to a B. If we had made the field goal, it's a B. I'm gonna give him a C+ there. What about the coaching grade versus Alabama?
Well, the coaching when Caden came in and they only allowed him to pass the ball 9 times, and he was in there since the second quarter. It's never going to be good. I'm going to give coaching a D-. It's borderline I don't know if they gave up. I don't feel like they would, but like, dude, come out and try to trick them or something. I mean, we're already getting beat. Show like you got some fight, like you got some life. Don't come out and just continue to run the ball and bashing your head up against the wall. Now he completed 4 of them 9, or Caden completed 4 out of 9. But I just feel like they handicapped him there for the rest of the game. So I'm gonna give them a D minus.
Yeah, I'm gonna give them a D as well, and it's really more just because of the results on the field. They're the coach's job, win, lose, or draws, to put the players in the best position to be successful and try to win the ball game. And with the amount of yards we gained, no points, and the amount of yards that we gave up on defense, it's hard to say that was an average output for us. I'd like to think our defense is going to be better than that. Especially as we get into the rest of our non-conference play and definitely into Conference USA play. I'd like to see us get a lot tighter. Keep those big plays in front of us, and obviously score points, win games. So I'm going to give them a D for coaching, and I think that really speaks just as much volumes to how good Alabama was, and just not how bad our coaches is. I don't think they had a bad game plan. I just think it was hard to execute with the talent that Alabama had on the field. So I will say that as a precursor, as an asterisk to my D. What about your overall grade for this 63-0 loss to Alabama?
I'm gonna give the overall grade a D. Since it is a B plus, I'll move up to a D plus or a D, because you're right. I mean, it is Bama. Even their second and third string players, they're awesome. They're quick. They're big. We just couldn't never get nothing going against them. But overall, just a long night sitting there watching it on TV. So yeah, I'm gonna give them a D.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, pretty much all my grades were D, except for special teams. So, I think the blended average is safely a D. When you lose in that fashion, that convincingly, not really being competitive and not putting up any points, I think a D is merited. Can't quite give you a C, but obviously, that's a tough game. We had to talk about it. Now we're going to flush it away. Grades are done. Alabama's over. It's in the right hand column. It's a loss. Now we're moving on to our EKU preview, which is our home opener coming up this Saturday, September 7th, at the Houch. Obviously, is a 6 p.m. kickoff. It is a whiteout game, so if you're attending the game, wear white. If you can, please do. I know some of us, like myself, I usually just like to wear red, but it is a whiteout for optics. Wear white. Have the whole crowd in white. The game will be on ESPN Plus. WKU is obviously coming into the game with a record of 0-1 after the 63-0 defeat to Alabama. EKU is also coming in at 0-1 after losing 56-7 to Mississippi State. This game is a rivalry game. It's a historic rival. It is the Battle of the Bluegrass Series, which WKU leads all time, 49 wins, 34 losses, and 3 ties. Our last meeting was in 2017, with WKU winning the game 31-17. And this is our second game in a row where we have just several coaching staff connections with EKU. With Alabama, we had 3 staff members at Alabama that were former WKU staffers. And we've got more than that at EKU. And it starts with their head coach, which is 5th-year head coach Walt Wells. He was a former offensive coordinator and offensive line coach here at Western from 2003 to 2012. And he has an overall head coaching record of 21-20 at Eastern Kentucky. Also, their defensive line coach is Eric Matthews. He coached at WKU from 2005 to 2012. Their offensive coordinator / running back coach is Andy Richmond. He coached at WKU in 2006. Their outside linebacker coach is Derek Day, and he coached at WKU in 2011. Their associate head coach is Mike Dietzel, and he worked at WKU from 2003 to 2009. And then offensive line coach Eric Ravelette graduated from WKU in 2003, and he was a starter on the 2002 1AA national title team. And he also coached tight ends at Western in 2003 and 2005. And then I also found it interesting as I was looking at the EKU roster that they do have several players on their team that are from Bowling Green, Kentucky, and several of them that we recruited heavily, including Vito Tisdale, Isaiah Gee, Brad Gurley, Simon Gee. All those guys are from Bowling Green. And then Kyle Vaca, who we recruited heavily, and Davion Hawkins Ingram, who we also recruited. I think at one point he may have even been committed to Western Kentucky and then decommitted and ended up at EKU. So Tyler, before we jump into our guest that we have to talk about EKU, what are your thoughts on this team and the game, and just how we feel about it heading up to this next Saturday?
I mean, this is going to be a good rivalry game. I think it's been since 2017, the last time we played. This is a game that I wish we get on the schedule more often because of the historical rivalry game. EKU, they got beat and I don't want to say embarrassed. They got put down against Mississippi State, and I think they want to come off and prove something, just like we want to. So you got two hungry teams coming into the Houch to play. I think this will be a really good game. It's crazy that there's so many coaches that had been that's on the EKU staff that's been at Western or coached at Western. But I mean that's awesome, and I just feel like this is going to be one for the ages. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully we blow them out of the water, but this will be a good game for us.
Yeah, we definitely need to right the ship and get back in the win column, obviously. But we're going to have a guest join us now. We have Vince Stover from the Sports Stove podcast, who covers EKU athletics, joining us. So let's get to that interview right now. All right, and we are joined now by Vince Stover from the Sports Stove podcast that covers EKU athletics. Man, Vince, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for letting me come on. Sometimes, the friendly banter between Western and Eastern isn't always as welcoming, so I appreciate you guys inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm looking forward to talking about this game. Obviously, I'm glad myself. I'm glad this game is back on the schedule. I know it's a historic rivalry, and I know that the same way that we want to look at, we as Western Kentucky want to look at UK and U of L, and we want them to look at us, with respect and not as little brother and not as lesser than. That's the same respect that I want to give to all the Kentucky schools, no matter what level. And this is a historic rivalry, and it's had a lot of ball games, a lot of wins and losses for both teams. And like I said, I'm glad that recently it's been on the basketball schedule. I'm glad that we now have it on the football schedule for the first time since 2017. I guess, Vince, talk to me about the EKU perspective. How does it feel to have this historic rivalry back on the schedule?
It's exciting. The community here in Richmond is pumped about it. And of course, our coach has ties to Western, and several family members of players have ties to Western as well. So it's a fun rivalry, I would say, versus like an ugly one. Anytime you get a chance to play in-state guys, it's always a good time. And with the preseason look from you guys, with the expectations that you guys have, it adds a little extra fire underneath the EKU fan base and players, just because, it's the goal from Richmond is for upset. And obviously it's going to be intriguing to see how it goes, because week one was tough for both of us. and so I think everyone's hoping for a closer matchup this week. At least we are hoping for a closer matchup this week. And but overall, man, everyone's really stoked about it to get in and play. Last year we played Kentucky and had a really close game with them, and that was so much fun. I mean, so many of these players, I did the math a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's something like I should have looked it up. It's a bunch of players that are from Kentucky on the EKU roster. And so anytime that you can stay in state, you're going to have a lot of high school friends and family that'll be in the area, those kinds of things too. And I think overall it's just it's a exciting week here at Eastern.
Now let's talk about the ties that EKU has with WKU. Since you mentioned that, EKU is led by Coach Wells and several other staff members with WKU ties. How has Coach Wells's tenure been at EKU?
So it started off pretty solid. He's done a phenomenal job of rebuilding the culture here. He ties back to Coach Kidd and the championship dynasty that he had. He did a great job in his early years of establishing that culture that he wanted here, and so that's been good. And then he had longevity at quarterback up until this year. And so that was positive. The expectations were set based on that. Now you're sitting there looking at a year that quite possibly is his last year as the head coach here at Eastern. And so there's a little bit of, he will not tell you this, but there is pressure on Coach Wells this year, and he's feeling it. And I mean, this team has underachieved the last 2 seasons based on the expectation. And now you come in this year, and the expectation isn't as high, but the pressure is just as high for Coach Wells. I really enjoy Coach Wells. He's been great to me, and the access that he's given me to his team, and the information that he's given. He's always answers questions, and he oftentimes goes further on topics than I expect him to. But that being said, as good as the start was for him, and getting the opportunity to get this team to have expectation again was awesome. But now it's about meeting those expectations, and he hasn't been able to do that the last 2 years. And this year, again, so much turnover with key position players. We lost the quarterback who was here for 6 years, lost a running back who's I think will get drafted next year. He went to Ball State. I don't get that, but great kick returner. And so I think losing him was big. Top receivers, Jaden Smith starting at UTEP this year. Jaden Higgins was here 2 years ago. He's a stud over there at Iowa State right now. So a lot has changed. That being said, overall, I think Wells has done a good job, but at the end of the day, it's about wins and losses. And they need to have some wins, and winning this weekend for Eastern would be big for Coach Wells's future for sure.
Yeah, I think it was interesting earlier. You talked about the ties that the EKU team, and both of our teams with so many Kentucky kids. When I was just scouring over your roster, you have 4 guys that are directly from Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Yeah.
You have a couple others from Owensboro, Russellville, which are short drives away. Then you have a couple guys that we recruited heavily, that are on your roster. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of familiarity with each other. I think there's 5 of your position coaches in Walt Wells, that have coached here previously. One of them played here and won a national championship in 2002. So it's going to be a little bit of a homecoming and a reunion for some of those guys. And I think that's what makes this game and getting back on the schedule and just a rivalry and just overall familiarity with each other. It shouldn't be every 7 years that we're playing. If it's
Right.
not every year, it should be definitely way more consistent. If not every other year, way more than every 7 for sure. Every 3, 4, every recruiting cycle we should be playing. But obviously,
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
so what would make it easier if we were in the same conference?
You're right.
but
Yeah.
but the sources that I have within the UAC and within some other conferences have told me the only reason we're not in the same conference is because Western has put up a stink about it. Now I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what I've been told. And I think people like drama, so they like to stir up as much drama as they can. I think it'd be awesome to be back in the same conference, and two Kentucky teams in the conference, and along with other schools that make sense for EKU to be playing. That would make it a lot more fun, in my opinion. But that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I know the transition for you all is imminent and desired. I haven't heard anything about roadblocks being put up, but I know there's definitely politics that go into that sort of stuff. So at the end of the day, I think money talks, and if it's going to happen, it'll happen. So we'll see. Obviously, that's going to continue to shuffle and play out over the next couple of years. But you talked a little bit about expectations for this season, and maybe a little bit of a hot seat or a warm seat at least for Coach Wells. So coming off this 56-7 loss to Mississippi State last week, what were your overall expectations for the team this year?
So I wrote an article this week and I predicted 8 wins for the team total. I've heard 6 wins from some people that are close to the organization. They would never say that publicly, but and then I've heard 9 wins, that kind of a thing. Going into Mississippi State, the hope and the expectation was to look decent. Right. They knew they were going to get beat. I say that the players had confidence that they'd go in and win at Mississippi State, and coaches would have said the same thing. But from my perspective, I knew they were going to get beat. The question was, could they come out and look like they belong, like they did against Kentucky last year? And they didn't. And it scares me because the problems that they had were the same problems as last year. And if you're not improving, you're going backwards. And, so I'm interested to see playing at Western this week. We'll know more about the team from this week's game than we will from last week's game, just based on the situation as a whole. They got a week under their belt, all that kind of stuff. And you guys do too. I still think it's an 8-win team. I felt like the Mississippi State and Western were probably losses. And then we got some tough conference games. Central Arkansas looks really good this year. And then we got them at home, so that's a good thing. So I still think it's an 8 to 9 win team, but they're going to have to show some improvement very, very quickly. Or, I don't think Wells would make changes in season on his staff. He made a lot of changes this offseason on the staff. But I mean, the coordinators are all the same. And if it looks exactly the same as the last, 3 years, well, what are we doing? It's kind of going to be a sign that everyone's going to be moving on here at the end of the year.
Well, you mentioned some things about week 1. Let's deep dive kind of into that a little bit farther. What are some things you learned about this year's team after the week 1 game? Yeah.
So first of all, I think we're going to be okay at quarterback. That was a big question mark just because we had Parker McKinney for so long. Now Matt Morrissey comes over. He didn't have a lot of wins at his previous stop, but he's a talented kid. I say kid, he's a man. But I think we're going to be okay there. I think Matt's going to do fine. The running backs are solid. Now we did lose Braden Sloan to Ball State, but Josh Carter comes back, and last year he had 714 yards. He looked really good against Mississippi State. And so the concern was then, do we have anybody behind Josh Carter? And Braden Latham stepped up. He looked really, really good this last week. So I think the running back situation's good. The O-line is very solid as well. It's probably the deepest position group that they have is O-line. And then I think positively, against the run, the defense played pretty decent. Tackling was overall good. The safeties were incredibly impressive tackling, wrapping up guys and bringing them down, not letting them break through them. I also learned that, again, the problems that we had last year are still there. So the big plays, they gave up, I think it was 14 big plays, and you just can't do that. And last year, the corners, they kind of get left out on an island. They play a zone most of the time, but yet still it seems like there's just no help for the corners. And I can sit there before a play and I'll tell my kids, like, oh, this one's going to hurt. You can just see it coming. So again, my hope is that they were not showing anything last week so that they could be, less on video for this week in the conference play and stuff like that. But man, what I learned last week was I'm afraid that the problems of last year are still around this year.
Yeah, I noticed when I was looking at the box score, obviously from Mississippi State, just wanted to know what to expect and who to watch out for, and kind of answering some of these questions myself. That obviously Morrissey was pretty steady. Definitely had that 2-headed monster at running back. Looks like they really shared that load. And then you had a lot of pass catchers. A lot. Yep. That ball was spread around a whole lot. And I like that you already touched on a few names, because my next question, and we always like to highlight some offensive players on the other team that we need to be aware of. We need to know where they are on the field, because you're going to be looking to get them the ball. So, highlight for us at least, 3 players if you want. It could be more, but who are 3 offensive players for EKU that we need to be aware of?
So we already talked about the running backs, so I'm going to skip them, but they are definitely guys you got to watch. So that's Josh Carter and Braden Latham. Pass catchers, Marcus Cowwise had a great game against Mississippi State. 5 catches, 45 yards. He's a guy that came on really strong this summer, had a phenomenal summer in camp, all that kind of stuff, and earned a starting spot. So he's a guy you're going to have to watch for. Daquan Stanley is a kid that I thought was going to be a starter. He was not a top 3 receiver coming into this game against Mississippi State. Now, he ended up being the second leading receiver in the game. He's a kick returner. He's an athlete. I mean, the kid is an athlete. I really expect him to be on the field more often in this game against Western than he was against Mississippi State. He's a dynamic athlete, so they need to get him the ball, and he looked good. I think I don't have it in front of me, but I think he had of his 40 or 33 yards receiving, I believe 16 of those were after the catch. And so like half of his yards came after he caught the ball. So he's a guy, definitely. Then the other guy, I would say, you look at the tight end situation at EKU. Hunter Brown is injured. I'm not sure. Coach Wells is not very open with the injury stuff to the media, so I'm not sure when he's going to be healthy and back. If he's back, he's an all UAC player. He's a kid that'll be really good. But they brought in Caleb Schlachter, and he won the starting job almost immediately with Hunter Brown down. And he only had 1 catch against Mississippi State, but I think we're going to see more tight end work this week against Western as well. So for me, it's Marcus Cowwise, Daquan Stanley, and Caleb Schlachter as the main guys to kind of keep an eye on.
All right, well, we'll definitely keep an eye on them, especially Caleb, because that is one heck of a name to try to pronounce. But on the flip side, what are 3 defensive players that WKU needs to be aware of?
Sam Robertson, he's a safety. This kid, he was injured for a lot of the summer, didn't have necessarily a lot of consistent work going on in the summer, but he's probably a top 3 or 4 player on the team, especially when healthy. He led the team in tackles last week at Mississippi State. He had 4 solos, 6 assisted, but 10 tackles last week. So he's a guy you definitely have to watch out for. Outside of him, I was expecting good things from a couple guys that didn't look good last week. So I'm still curious to see how that shakes down. The defensive line, 2 guys on the D line. Ryan Jackson, I got to mention him. He's my co-host on my show. If I don't mention him, I'll get in trouble. Ryan's great. He's a D tackle. He takes up 2 blockers on almost every single play. He holds his own there in the middle. He doesn't always necessarily get the penetration, but he holds his own, especially against 2 blockers. He's not going to typically penetrate, but he will not get pushed backwards either. So he holds that middle up really nicely. And then Jeremiah Bailey, he's a junior this year and got his first. He's a true junior, so I think he might be a redshirt sophomore. It's his 3rd year in school. And Jeremiah is he's this kind of athlete that you expect to see at the upper level, and he's sitting here at EKU right now. And this kid has a phenomenal attitude. And when talk about pass rushing off the D line, they play a 3-4 defense, but he's a D end in that 3-4 defense. And the kid is I think he's special. And Jeremiah Bailey's a kid. He's wearing number 4 this year. He's a kid you'll see in the backfield, whether he's getting the sack or he's just getting the pressure. You'll see Jeremiah Bailey in the backfield.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Most of those guys you talked about were near the league lead on your team in tackles in the previous game, and then also just pretty cool and pretty rare to have your co-host as one of those guys you had to highlight and talk about. Now, another thing we like to do, and we do it on our end, on our segment of the show, we talk about what are the WKU keys to victory. What do we have to do to win the ball game? So I would love to hear your perspective on that for, your keys to victory, but for the Eastern Kentucky team, what, maybe 3 things do you all need to do to come out with a victory in this ball game in Bowling Green, Kentucky?
Yeah, it starts with defense. They got to stop the big plays. They just can't let it happen. They did so well with tackling last week. It's just when the receivers get behind the DBs that we're screwed. So stopping the big plays is number 1. Effective ground game, number 2. Running the football. Again, we got good running backs, good O-line. And if they can get that run game going, it opens up the offense so much and gives great opportunity. Matt Morrissey, the quarterback, he can. He's mobile. He's not the mobile quarterback on the team, but he is mobile. So if you can get that run game going, that allows him some play action stuff and some ways to get things going. Last thing I would say, the third thing I would say is probably the pass rush. To create the pass rush. Jake Johnson, the defensive coordinator, he doesn't send a whole lot of pressure. He kind of expects 3 or 4 guys to get there. And if they can succeed in that, well, then that obviously makes the defense better as well. So at the end of the day, it honestly comes down to defense more than anything. You can go through the cliche things, don't turn the ball over and all that kind of stuff. But if the EKU defense can hold Western to, I'd say 24 points, then I think we got a ball game. But if they let them break 30, I mean, I think you guys will win by 2 or 3 touchdowns at least if we can't stop you guys.
Well, speaking of that, how do you see this game playing out, and give us a score prediction?
Okay, so I've been promoting this interview and telling my listeners I'm going to be on this podcast, and so they might tune in. So I got to be careful what I say here. No, I think I haven't seen the line. Have they put out a line yet? Did you guys know?
I haven't seen it either. I know the ESPN Power Index has us at like an 85% chance to win. I didn't see a line though.
Yeah, it seems like EKU is the last line to come out every week anyhow. But I'd like to think that EKU can keep it where if they get a turnover late in the second half, they got a chance to win it. I would like to think we're looking at like a 24-20 game. And if EKU is able to pull the upset, it would be like a 26 or 27-24 game, something in that range. I mean, I think that you guys obviously are the favorites, and there's a reason for that. And from what I saw last week, I'm not sure that we've got enough at this point in the season to overcome what you guys have as well. So I'll say, for the sake of being realistic, I'm going to call it 24-20 Western in this game.
So I'll take that. We need to score some points. That's what we want to see. We just want to see some points scored, as I'm sure that you do as well after that Mississippi State game. We both have a rough week 1. Now I have to ask, talking about all this ball game and it being an in-state, rivalry and an easy trip per se compared to some other road games for you. Are you going to make the trip to Bowling Green, Kentucky? And should we, the WKU fan base, should we expect a good delegation of EKU fans to make the trip over here to the Houch?
So I have not had the conversation with my wife yet about Saturday. So no guarantees that I'm going to be there just yet. You should have, it should be a decent EKU showing. Again, the family's pretty much at every game, all the players' families and things like that. The family travels really well. Coach Wells, again, has done a great job with the culture of the team and has made it as easy as possible for parents to be there and families to be there. And again, a lot of guys from out west, Western Kentucky area as well. So yeah, I think you're going to see a good little contingent of EKU fans out there. They seem to travel pretty well. Even at Mississippi State, there was actually a decent crowd for EKU too. So, and then we had some Mississippi kids on the team too. That helps for sure. I would like to get out there. I've never been to the football stadium, and I'd like to get out there. And that'd be my first game, of course, of the season. I didn't travel to Mississippi State either, and we got 3 straight home games coming up after Western. So, yeah, me and my wife have not had that conversation yet about what we're doing this weekend.
We'll definitely have that conversation, get that permission slip signed. And if you make it over to Bowling Green, Kentucky, obviously feel free to hit us up and let us know you're coming so we can link up. And if you or any of your listeners that are making the trip and it's the first time since 2017, obviously, if anybody needs any recommendations or parking, food, beverages, whatever it may be, feel free to just slide into the DMs of the podcast. Our personals are listed in the bio. Obviously, we'll be glad to help. We like to be gracious hosts and welcome anyone to Bowling Green, Kentucky. We want you to have a good time, enjoy your stay, have a good time at the football game, and want to come back in the future. So if you get to make the trip, obviously, I look forward to hopefully getting to meet you in person. I do thank you for taking your time, on this Monday night, joining us and talking about some EKU football. Before we let you go, though, man, definitely take a moment and, plug your show, where people can find you, where people can find your show, and just listen to what you cover with EKU.
Yeah. So thank you, by the way. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate that. And for the opportunity to plug my stuff too. So the Sports Stove podcast, it's kind of a 3-headed monster. So the Sports Stove Local Hour is my EKU show. that I do it once a week. I've got Ryan Jackson, who's the starting defensive tackle. He's my co-host. We try to interview at least 2 players every week outside of Ryan and get those on. So we're planning on talking to Marcus Cowwise and Gabe Fletcher this week. That show will be Thursday evening. We do it live on YouTube, and then it's always available. The audio is always available on the podcast as well. And for what it's worth, the Sports Stove, I also host the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show every Sunday. We're winding down the fantasy baseball season. And then my dad co-hosts the original Sports Stove show with me every week. We do a Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we talk NFL, college football, Major League Baseball. Those are the main things we discuss. NASCAR, we talk a lot of NASCAR as well. So that's on Wednesday night as well. I'm on social media, Twitter or X and Instagram. At Sports Stove is my handle, and appreciate again the opportunity to come on here. I always love chatting EKU, and I'm excited about what's ahead this weekend.
All right, man. Once again, thank you for your time to coming out here. I'm definitely going to be adding you on X and on Instagram and following you on all that stuff.
All right, and that was just an awesome interview. As always, we thank Vince for joining us and just talking about EKU football and just giving us more insight about their team and about their program, than we would ever know. Just has definitely more insight, more knowledge about that team and what to expect from them, on the field this Saturday. So now, Tyler, we've got to jump into our keys to victory for this game versus EKU. So what's going to be your first key to victory versus Eastern Kentucky?
Mine's going to be play like you got something to prove. Obviously with ESPN running the score and and basically running through the game after the Alabama game for the next day. I feel like on the national stage, we need to prove that we are able to move the ball, able to put up points, and able to play defense. So I feel like we definitely have something to prove this Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, my first key to victory is going to be keep the big plays in front of us. That was kind of definitely an Achilles heel. Alabama was 8 out of 13 on third down. So we had opportunities. We got them to third down 13 times, but they converted almost 2/3 of those, with 8 of those gaining a first down. So, we have to keep those big plays, those long scores in front of us. I know the defense is definitely going to be reviewing and learning from the game tape and the angles, etc., that occurred during the Alabama game. And I would probably say that more than likely Eastern Kentucky is not going to have the amount of speed and talent and depth on the field that Alabama had. But regardless, you have to respect your opponent. You have to respect who's in front of you, and just play sound football, and know your spacing, know your leverage, and know, to keep that big play in front of you. Just know the down and distance and what may be coming at you. So I'd say keep the big plays in front of you. That's my first key to victory. Tyler, what's your second?
Mine's going to be limit the turnovers, with us 2 to Alabama's 1. I know last season we always won if we committed less turnovers. So I feel like we definitely need to limit ours and exploit theirs. Go in, get the interceptions, force a few fumbles, keep their offense off the field.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with finish drives, and I said this, kind of tongue in cheek for the Alabama game. I said score points. Obviously that's the name of the game. You have to score points to win the game, to stay competitive. And then we turned around, we didn't score any points in that game. We had several opportunities where we were down close, missed a field goal, could have kicked a couple more that we decided to go for it on fourth down and didn't convert, turned the ball over, which subsequently turned into points. This game I didn't mention earlier in the preview, but the ESPN Power Index does give us an 84.1% chance to win, with 15.9% for EKU. So, that being said, it's not a gimme. Sometimes in these FBS, FCS matchups, it's 95-5 or worse to the FBS team. So, we've got to go out and prove we can score some points, that we still have a lethal offense. I think we know that we have plenty of weapons in the receiver room, running back room, and our defense can be more sound than giving up 600 yards and 63 points. So, I'm just going to say score some points, finish some drives with points, get some confidence going for the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, running backs, and everybody on that team, and just get a little mojo, a little swag on that sideline. So definitely score some points, win the ball game.
My third is going to be contain the run. This past Saturday, Jalen Milroe had 10 carries, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. Justice Haynes, he had 4 carries, 102 yards, 1 touchdown. The rushing attack really got to us, and I know our defense is able to slow down the run. So this week we're definitely going to do that, because if we do shut down EKU's passing plays, they're definitely going to watch the last week's game probably, or know from last year that containing the run is one of our Achilles heels. So hopefully we're able to do that this week.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. My third one is going to be to limit turnovers. You win the turnover battle. I think a lot of times when you come into a game, you're highly favored, and if the other team is going to put themselves in a position to steal the game from you, it's usually going to be from them, winning that turnover battle, forcing 2, 3 turnovers and, stopping you from scoring, and they go down and turn those into points. So I think we have to take care of the football. When we were moving the ball early in the game and we threw those interceptions early, that really took a lot of momentum off the field and gave it immediately to Alabama. And they turned that into a quick 21-0 lead in the first quarter. So definitely, limit the turnovers, win the turnover battle, and just take care of the football. Sounds easy, but those guys, they have to go out and execute. The quarterback TJ Finley, if he's playing and starting, I assume he is. Has to just make good reads, not throw the ball into double coverage. Make sure those guys are open and put the ball on target. So definitely limit those turnovers, win that. Now, Tyler, who is going to be your MVP, your most valuable topper for the game versus EKU?
I'm going to go with TJ Finley. He was able to complete 18 passes last week. I'm sure he'll be able to do more than that this upcoming week. It is kind of a lesser talent on their defense. And I feel like, and you're right, we do have a lot of weapons in the receiving core. I'm still waiting on Dalvin to finally get the chance to come out and ball out, continue what he did in the Toastery Bowl. Because I feel like this is his senior year. He wants to come in and show out, show what he can do. And we have a lot of other weapons we can lean on, either running backs who can run out and catch the ball, or get the ball and just run right up the middle or off the edges. And I feel like Musa Berry is good to go, but I feel like it all starts with the quarterback, with TJ Finley.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's TJ Finley for me. And I think a lot of this is going to be, especially coming off the heels of the defeat that we just had, 63-0, didn't score any points, didn't look great, didn't threaten to score. And now we have a home opener with a lot of talent still on this team. And, all of our goals are still in front of us as far as winning a conference, making a bowl game, potentially threatening for the G5 spot in the playoff. If we just take care of our business and win the game, we're going to have to come out and play WKU Hilltopper football, throw the ball around the yard, score a lot of points, and do what we do. So I think, like you said, that's going to start and end with TJ Finley. I think this team's going to come out hungry to put the Alabama game in the rearview mirror, show that obviously there's a lot more talent on the field than what was shown in Tuscaloosa. And they're gonna, they're gonna want to do what Kalen DeBoer and team did down in Tuscaloosa, put on a show. Run the fireworks out of the scoreboard. They're gonna want to get back and balance things and make it right, and just show that there's enough talent on this field to still win a lot of ball games this year. So I'm excited. I think that's going to start and end with TJ Finley. I'm still very high on what his ceiling is and how far he can lead us this year. So give me TJ Finley. Now, what is your score prediction versus EKU?
I think I had it 45-10 or 42-10. I felt I knocked it back a little bit. I'm gonna go 35-13. Tops win.
Yeah, so your preseason prediction, you had it 49-10, if what I'm looking at is correct, what I wrote down. So, yeah, you knocked it down a little bit, gave EKU a few more points. I'm tempted to do the same thing, but I'm going to stick to my guns until I see this defense against equal footing team and not number 5, number 6 Alabama. I'm going with WKU winning this game 42-10. I think we have enough skill and enough talent and enough depth to put a lot of points on the board. And I'd like to think that our defense can buckle down and can keep some players and some big plays in front of them. So give me WKU 42-10, home opener victory, and hopefully convincing and quieting a lot of the haters and the doubters out there that are just, quite frankly, overreacting to this Alabama loss that we all just endured and suffered through. But really looking forward to this home opener, the whiteout, first game in the house. Hopefully the weather's great. Hopefully we fill the stands, 18, 19, 20,000 plus people come to show out for it. It's perfect time of year. It's cooling down a little bit. It's not so deathly hot. It is an evening game. The sun will set. We'll be under the light. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. And just that first home game tailgating and just game atmosphere in general, man. I'm really looking forward to it. So Tyler, hit us with your final words and then take us on out of here.
Well, it's never as bad as it is, as you think it is, and with life, so is football. There's always next week that you can right the ship, and I feel like I'm with you on this. I feel like WKU is going to handle business this week, and I feel like they're going to open up the home season with a dub. I'd also like to say I seen you and Cody on TV. I know a lot of people sent you pictures and it's like, hey, is that you? But man, that's awesome. I'm glad you got to go. Hopefully next time they play down there, I'll be able to join you in going down there. But man, it's week 2 football. You're right. The weather's supposed to be great this upcoming weekend from what I saw. Highs in the 70s, lows like in the low 50s or maybe high 40s. Great football weather. But yeah, everyone come out to the game on Saturday, wear white, be loud, and let's get this team on to beating EKU. With that, I say, Moff, who has it better than us?
It's still go Tops. Nobody, baby.
Nobody. Go Tops.
Later, guys.
See you.